This series of videos is going to break down the advertising campaign that we put together for Manfrotto's new fast tripods. It was a really interesting project for us to get to work on, and obviously Still Moving and myself are associated with Manfrotto and Vitek, so that's how we came to be in the position to do this advertising campaign. At the point at which we started having the conversations, we had already been working on the testing of the tripod for the twin leg, so we had a pretty good idea of the features and the functionality of it, but we hadn't actually worked with the single leg yet, so it was interesting to see that one in the flesh for the first time as well. Now clearly the standout feature for this tripod line is how quickly it can be deployed and how easy it is to adjust up and down and also spread the legs, because they've got a slightly different system for how the legs spread now on these tripods as well, and you can get down really, really low. So when we were having those initial phone calls and video meetings, we were talking about how we will be able to show those features in an interesting way. When I'm doing projects like this and I'm trying to put together creative, it's very easy for me to have an idea in my head and kind of knit it all together and know exactly how it's going to play out, or have at least my idea about how it's going to play out, and whether it actually does that or not is another question, and something we're going to look at in terms of creative and final product. But in this instance, we needed to be able to articulate to the client, Manfrotto, what it was that was in my head that was going to translate to something that people watching it, the kind of people who might buy this tripod, would be able to grasp, find enjoyable, show them the features and the functions of the tripod, and also hopefully be eye-catching enough to stand out in that context as well. Now my very first thought with this was actually something completely different from what we ultimately ended up going with, and we did put together some mood videos where I'll talk over a couple of scenes, shots, that kind of thing, which have influenced where I think the project should go, and explain, while these scenes and things are playing out, why I think that's a relevant thing for the product or service or whatever it is that we're doing. In this case, obviously it's the fast tripods. And in the case of this project, my first thought was westerns. If you think of Sergio Leone films and you think about all of the shots that go to make up those really iconic dramatic scenes, it's got shots at head height, it's got shots down at waist height where you're seeing the hands and the guns. We've got shots of feet and boots and walking. We have wide shots looking down on a whole group of people. So there's a really good motivation, a really good excuse to have to change heights really quickly. So that was my first thought. We'd find a location which was suitably Western, and then we would populate it like it was a big film. So we get some big lights, we get some big frames, we would make it look like a set. And then we would go about shooting a whole sequence. Someone comes into a saloon, we have all the standoff and stuff, we're looking down, we're looking up, we're at table height, we're at head height, showing all of these different perspectives like you see in those films, and then ultimately it goes outside and we have a gunfight, and we are jumping between all of those different heights. And the idea with this would be that we'd be doing it at sunset, there's pressure to be able to get all of those shots really quickly, and that's where the function of the fast tripod comes into play, because it allows us to change height very, very quickly, very, very easily, and get all of those different shots on different characters before we run out of light. Clearly, you look at the advert, we didn't go down that route in the end. We had some more back and forth. We were batting around a few ideas. Although they liked the idea of the changing the heights and the motivation for doing it, it was deemed that this was too narrative for the purposes of the tripod, and we needed to show more variation of situations. So although the whole film set thing was good, it perhaps pitched it at a really high production value setup, where we needed to show lots more things in different environments to be able to tick off all the different kinds of people who might actually be using this product, and also use the two different products. So that was something we took on board after this initial stage of feedback, and we came back with another idea, which was, we do tons of cool shoots. If you look at our show reels, they have all kinds of things. They show a bit of behind the scenes, they show different locations, they show different situations of what we're shooting and how we're shooting it. And that has a really nice vibe to it. It feels exciting. For someone in the industry, watching these things should get them a little bit pumped, a little bit hyped to go out and do something of their own. So rather than go the whole Western narrative route, we thought, well, if our show reels are designed to do that, why not make something which feels more like that, more like we're a group of filmmakers and we're going out and we're doing all of these fun things, and whoever watches it sees these things and wants to be a part of it. And that's where we came to this whole idea of having all of the different locations and all of the different environments. So at this point we started to moodboard what kind of environments we'd like to be able to show. So clearly having some snow and ice was high on the priority list, because it's a very different environment to everything else. We got the dramatic scenery. And why we chose Iceland is interesting, and I'll come back to it a little bit later when we talk about logistics. Apart from that, we wanted to have things in there that were analogous to things that were on our show reel. So we had the whole horse riding sequence, and we wanted to do something similar to that. So some English countryside, model riding a horse, make it all dramatic, do it at sunrise. That could be really cool. We wanted to do a fashion shoot in a studio, because that would allow us to bring in more lighting, more crew, have a little bit of a different vibe. So that was something that could stand out again from the other two, ice and English countryside, and a big studio shoot with big lights and all the rest of that. And then I wanted a location fashion shoot of somewhere that didn't feel like the UK, somewhere that felt a little bit more European. This went through several revisions, and it's all down to logistics and timing, so we will come back to why we settled on Barcelona a little bit later on in the series. There was one other shoot that we wanted to knit in here, and that was the more corporate talking head. For that, we actually are fortunate at the moment. We're in a really cool building, and there's lots of people in the building that we know, so we were able to find an appropriate space that's kind of big glass windows, and bring up a desk, put a Mac on it, dress it to look right, and that was our corporate talking head setup, and that was within our building, so we were able to orchestrate that relatively easily. Joe set about working out how that would fit with our timings, because we had other shoots on as well that we needed to fit in, and we also had quite a limited time frame to shoot everything that we needed, have enough time to get through post-production, and then deliver the final videos to the client in order to launch the tripod, and that was going to be at the photography show in the UK. Now, with hindsight, the photography show was cancelled because of COVID, so it didn't actually end up launching at that moment. So we would have had more time, but it wouldn't have really affected things because of the whole situation. So we were always working to that timing of the photography show was the time where we had to have all of the assets ready for delivery and ready to be shared. On the basis of all of this, I cut together a new mood board which showed the kind of shots that we were trying to do. A lot of that was based on our show reel, and I also found a track which I thought would work perfectly for it, so I started to integrate that in, and that's actually the track which you'll hear on the final version. And that really helped to knit it together. Having the right music gives everything a little bit of pace. It informs how quickly your edits are going to happen. It informs the way that you maybe want to shoot something. So if you can decide on that ahead of time, it can actually really help. Now, I appreciate more than anyone that music can change, and when you're working with clients, not necessarily in this scenario because we did end up using that track, but it has happened where the music's changed at the last minute and suddenly the whole edit takes on a very different feel. Now that can completely destroy all of the vibe that you had gone about setting up. So if you are committing to a track, be very, very wary, especially if you're working with a new client and they haven't done many projects before. Because in that situation, you find with the greener clients, they are more likely to change their mind and they haven't perhaps considered how everything will fit together until they see the final thing. And once they see the final thing, they think, oh, maybe that's too dark, or maybe that's too happy, or maybe everything needs to feel a little bit slower. So all of those considerations suddenly go out the window and you have to recut something that was shot with a very, very particular vibe in mind to fit with a new track. We were very lucky here and we got to use that track that I was kind of wedded to, but that isn't always the case. So do take some caution from this and think about how you can make things work even if you don't get to use the music that you really love. At this point we're at a stage where we have a very good idea about what we need to shoot. We just need to work out how that's all going to fit with timings and crew. For all of this, I was going to be the hero talent mostly, which is a bizarre situation to be in, but that meant that I wasn't going to be filming the actual shots of the tripod. I was filming stuff on camera. Now the things that I was filming still had to sit within the context of this piece, and we wanted to have supporting material that went along with it, so it wasn't just like I'm going to these locations and I'm not capturing anything. But it did mean that when we got there, the priority was to film me in the location, not me to film in the location. So I didn't have very long to try and get some things which could cut together into a meaningful short film, or at least populate the wider edit with something which made sense for the location that I was in. Crew-wise, on most of these we had the same crew. That was myself, Naoki and Ben. Naoki and Ben were in charge of filming all the shots of me with a tripod, setting it up, moving around. Ben obviously is drone pilot, so he is in charge of all of those drone shots. And between the two of them, they mixed it up a little bit. When we came to do the studio shoot, obviously that was a much bigger crew. Joe, Rathika, Nathan, so that we could make it feel like a different kind of shoot, so that we could have someone who was there for production, someone who was there for hair and makeup and styling and first day seeing, so that everything took on a little bit of a different vibe and showed the tripod in a very different environment. For the office shots, again, myself doing an interview with Mark Steen, someone who's in our building, who we've known for years, really cool. He just said, yeah, sure, I'll come down and help you guys out, be the interviewee. And then finally for the horse riding shoot, Ben is dealing with the drone stuff, Naoki's dealing with the filming. Rathika and I are on film. She's first day scene, prepping the camera, that kind of stuff, and also acting as comms. And then we also had Nathan there just to be able to capture some photography of everything and help out with the logistics.